Hi everyone! Just wanted to jump on here today to share my galactocele story. Sorry, just nursing my son here. As you can see, I am still nursing my 8-month-old, despite having a galactocele. Depending on where the galactocele is in the breast, normally they're found towards the back of the breast, so closer towards the rib cage. In my case, mine was located right behind the nipple and like just to the side of it. So for me, it actually blocked all milk flow in that breast. It caused me to have to get 16 aspirations because an aspiration by needle is the most common form of treatment. The thing about getting it aspirated though is it's going to fill up in mere hours of getting it drained with the nature of milk production, as you know if you're a breastfeeding mother. Yes, I got my aspirations done, about 16 of them. My son was still a newborn. He was 7 weeks at the time this all began. After the 16th time, because it was about 3 months in of getting this treatment done over and over and over again with no improvement, I was like, okay, that's enough. I just decided to stop getting them done. Over the course of that time, I share this in my blog post, but basically the buildup of pressure inside the galactocele got to be so much that it created a milk fistula, which means that the milk comes out through the skin. So in addition to the galactocele, I had a milk fistula. I had milk coming out of a hole that it created in my breast. All the while, I am learning to breastfeed on just the left side for my son, and did use formula for about 5 feedings during that entire time, but basically just kept chugging along and continued to breastfeed on just that one side. So here he is, my little munchkin. So yes, after the 3rd month and the 16th aspiration, I decided to stop, and I just let it fill back up. But then it filled up to the size of my whole breast, basically. It was 10 centimeters in diameter, and it was really hard on the outside. So we got through the holidays, and then I think after that I was like, okay, I can't like go on with essentially having a hard baseball on my chest. So I decided to get another aspiration done, and the milk fistula by that point had completely filled up. It had completely healed up. The skin just healed on its own, thankfully. And the doctors were amazed at how big it had gotten. And I was also told by one of the radiologists there to stop breastfeeding altogether, because he was like, look at what it's doing to your body. Like, when your son grows up and you tell him this story, I don't think he'll be mad at you for quitting breastfeeding and prioritizing your body over doing this for his sake. And so I was heartbroken to hear that. My goal was to breastfeed until he was at least 12 months old. So I talked to another radiologist. She was actually head of the department there, and she was a female and said that she nursed all 3 of her babies, and she said that in her opinion she didn't think I had to stop. Yeah, it just took a lot of grit and commitment to stick to my goal, and I did consider seriously weaning at one point, and my husband and I were getting like prepared to do that and to start having to buy formula and stuff like that. But we carried on, and I started working with a clinical herbalist to try to help heal the galactocele, because even after the very last aspiration, it still didn't fully go away because they didn't drain all of what was in there, and so it left like a small pocket about the size of like a marble, so about like that big. And then I started on a systemic enzyme supplement, which I discovered through MitoLife. I took their Dissolve It All supplement along with the Shilajit, and I started supplementing magnesium, bicarbonate, and vitamin E, and I started on the CLF protocol via Matt Blackburn and started feeling immensely better. I have to say I felt a lot better than when I was on the protocol that the herbalist had me on. She had me on a couple of different lymph moving tinctures, and I was to drink like at least 3 liters of water a day and take ashwagandha, because I was relying heavily on the ashwagandha to just kind of help with stress management and stuff like that. And as soon as I started on the CLF protocol, I started seeing huge shifts in just my like stress resilience and energy levels. I was a lot happier, like laughing more. I mean, it helps that at this point my son was like 6-7 months old, so he was becoming a lot easier to take care of. It's funny, some people think that the newborn stage is easier than like older baby stage. He's blowing raspberries and being very funny. Anyhow, so after the last aspiration, I started the CLF protocol and started on this Dissolve It All supplement because I kind of self-assessed that maybe I had a lot of scar tissue in my right breast, which is the one that the galactocele was in, because it just felt so hard. Like it was this very hard lump in my breast. So a week and a half into taking the Dissolve It All, I noticed that the area was starting to feel very tender, and then it got red, and then it got very inflamed, and then it got very, very sensitive and painful. Just brushing against the skin or the surface of it, it like really hurt. I couldn't hold my son on that side. So I knew that there was a possible infection going on in there. And I have to say, my PTSD definitely kicked in. I definitely didn't want to go back to the doctor to get it aspirated again, because those are such a pain to deal with, let alone they're expensive. And, you know, it's not easy going to a hospital or any kind of medical facility during COVID because of all the restrictions, and I have a baby that I have to arrange care for every time I go to the hospital because I'm not allowed to bring him with me. So anyways, I was determined not to go back to the hospital again ever unless I really had to, which in this case I didn't think that I had to. I was like feeling very confident that I could heal it on my own. And I could tell that the systemic enzyme supplement was working. It was definitely, like, progress was happening in the affected breast. The milk fistula, I told you that it had healed. Well, the systemic enzyme supplement definitely worked on the scar tissue within the breast, but it also worked on the scar tissue where the milk fistula had healed. The skin where the fistula was, there was a scar on it before, but now it was like back to being very thin. It was like, you could tell it was like one very, very thin membrane, just like keeping the liquid down in there. And I could tell, sorry, I just had to catch my son from jumping off the bed. And I could tell that there was definitely milk still trapped in there, because when I touched that hole, where the hole used to be, it would turn white, the skin would turn white, so I could tell there was milk being pressed up against it. So one night I decided to do a castor oil pack on it because that was one thing the herbalist was having me do, and I noticed that it was helping it become a little softer, and it did help it go down in size a little bit, but it was still definitely there until I started on this systemic enzyme supplement. So I'm doing the castor oil pack on it, and I go to put my son down to sleep as I normally do every single night, and I remembered that I had the hot oil pack on there, so I go to take it off. I'm holding my son in my other arm, and I noticed that the pack had stuck to the skin of where the milk fistula used to be, so where the hole in my breast is, and it stuck to it, and when I peeled off the pack, it broke the skin, and milk started coming out of my breast. So it essentially created another milk fistula. So I quickly rushed over to the sink, and I leaned over and I just let the milk pour out of my breast, and I had to put my son down on the floor because it was more than I had realized there to be. And I noticed that as it was pouring out, the pain immediately went away. And after everything came out, which I noticed that the substance had gotten very thick. So the milk in there was obviously like 3 months old at this point, because the last aspiration was done in November, and when this all happened, it was January, so very old milk. So naturally it had, turned into a thicker form. Even if I did go to the hospital to get an aspiration, they wouldn't have been able to get all of it out with a needle because it would have been too thick. I'm so happy that it happened this way, even though it's like seemingly unnatural, although it is perfectly natural because my body just did all of it on its own, with like no outside intervention. My breast has gone back to what it was pre-pregnancy. And I'm still continuing to breastfeed on the other side. And I'm still exclusively breastfeeding my son. He will be 8 months old in like 5 days. And I just wanted to share my story about having a galactocele and dealing with it for 5 months out of the 7 months that I've been breastfeeding. I also wanted to share my story because I was told by a doctor to stop breastfeeding, and yet my gut instinct was to continue, and I'm so glad I did, because it took a long time, but it turned out all right. And my son is doing completely fine. He's gaining weight steadily. The milk supply in my left breast has caught up to provide enough for my son and give him what he needs. If you are going through anything like this where you are struggling on your breastfeeding journey, I just want you to know that it is a struggle for so many of us, and you are not alone. And if you want to share your story or have any comments, definitely leave them for me, because I'd love to hear from you. There's not a lot of info about galactoceles on the internet, and I just wanted to normalize experiences like mine. My experience is probably really, really far from normal. Not a lot of people breastfeed from just one side. I know it's been done, and my midwives and doctors that I've worked with have all told me that it's possible. So I knew that it could be done. So if you have a goal, but something is getting in the way of it, I just want to encourage you to trust yourself, listen to yourself, definitely, lean into your support and go for it. Don't ever doubt yourself. Don't let anybody, even if they are an MD, don't let anyone make you feel like your goal is ridiculous or anything like that. And if you look for it, you will find support. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let me know your thoughts. Bye.